But yeah, with Al's beats, they don't really have some of those elements that the things on test strips might have had. So it's like I mean, you heard the album, right? From the first song, it's no nonsense. So like, get on the train or get left. You know what I mean? Like I have to keep up. So yeah, it's matching the energy of the production as best as I can. And yeah.
Microphone check, 1, 2, what is this? It's the 5'7" assassin in the podcast business. I am your host, Rohan Patra, the rap music plug at your service. Here we are again at the end of a rainbow. Simply put, today's guests have been on a run for the ages. Ever since their debut album in 2013's Race Music, Armand Hammer, New York-based duo of Elucid and Billy Woods, have been on an absolute tear. With each and every passing release, their chemistry has gotten tighter and their artistic scope has widened. In 2021, the duo elevated to another level of critical and commercial success, teaming up with the legendary Alchemist for Haram, an album that has elevated the stock of Woods and Elucid with no signs of letting up, delivering the amazing test strips in 2023 soon after, and then incredible solo records in 2024 and 25 respectively. And now in 2025, they joined forces with the Alchemist once again with their latest album, Mercy. In this episode, we discuss the lean, scaled-back creative approach to Mercy, the key themes that emerged, Al's superpowers as a producer, and much more. The Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV is the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. Through in-depth artist interviews, album reviews, and general rap commentary on the best that the underground rap scene has to offer, this is your one-stop shop to knowing what to add to your queue, play next, or pop into your record player. Welcome to the show.
I was laughing though. I thought that was on the record, Chaz.
Me too.
I you did too. That's why I was laughing.
Oh my god. Okay. Armand Hammer, how are you guys doing today?
Chilling, man.
I'm good.
I'm blessed. At the time of recording this, it's October 25th. You released two singles, but that first single, Super Nintendo, off this upcoming album with the Alchemist, Mercy. I wanted to start with like just asking about the cover art because it's like a picture of like a young football team, looks like high school age from the past. I imagine that one of these people is you, Woods, because of the black box covering the face. But like, Elucid, are you in this too?
That's my junior high school PAL football team from some year in the 90s.
So were you with one of the 50 numbers? Because I did think there was someone that looked like you, but I was like, I'm not sure.
You know it's me.
I didn't want to like
Yeah.
I didn't want to like assume too much.
My face
but
is a little rounder, but it's the same guy.
yeah, I was like, that looks so much like Elucid.
Same
shit.
eyes. Yeah.
Did you play linebacker?
Nah, I was a lineman. They tried me at middle linebacker. I was too slow, so they kept me on the line because I could pop open the holes on offense, and on the defensive end, I was a D end. So it was coming around the side like Reggie White.
but Woods, are you in that too?
We're not gonna get into that.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, that's a really interesting cover art, and I mean, I felt it was also just an interesting choice to make that the lead single, like that being the final track on the album. You know, interesting first choice, I have to say. And
I also have no comment.
I do also have to say that I just generally, when I think about this album Mercy with the Alchemist, I honestly didn't really expect when we first heard Haram that there would be a follow-up, and it's not really for any particular reason. Obviously I loved it, lots of people loved it, it was a big record for the both of you, but I didn't really think that we were going to get another, and so the fact that we did is a welcome surprise when it was announced. what prompted you to go back to Al or have Al come back to you guys for a second bite at the apple? Like, how did rekindling that relationship take shape?
I think for me, that it's interesting to see people say that, and obviously, no, people don't know the relationships or how things get put together. So sometimes you only are made aware of how people might perceive something after the fact. So honestly, the idea of like we're gonna make another record between us and Al was probably already a thing that everyone had thought, I don't know, shortly after the first one came up. It wasn't like, let's do it today, but it's like we all stayed in connection and continued working together in different ways. Al had a beat on Bessie. He had production on Gollywog. He had production on Brass with More Mother. I did a track with him for the one with Earl. There's an Armand Hammer track we did with him that hasn't come out yet. So it's like, and we're going there and hanging out. Like we still do
Every time I'm
shows.
in LA, most times I'm in LA.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do shows here and there. We still did shows together. Or when he was coming to town, Alk and friends, like we're hanging out socially and doing business.
Mm-hmm.
Not on a major level, but doing business, doing shows together. So it wasn't really a thing. I think the analogy I used when somebody else asked me about it was like, oh, if you have a friend and like a lot of times you play rec league ball with them or something, or like you're playing a run, and then they're like, oh, hey, it's fall. Maybe you didn't play last year. This year, hey, it's fall. You want to sign up and you know run some rec league? We meet twice a week. You're like, oh, fuck it, yeah, let's go. It wasn't any momentous decision, and it wasn't something that anyone had to be like, let's have a sit down about it. It was kind of more like, when is this the right time?
Yeah.
And it got brought up. But it was no question in my mind that we would, before we even went to do test strips, I think I had been like, yo, we should do test strips, and then somewhere in the next 2 or 3 albums, we should do another one with Al.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And
What's the downside? The beats are great. We're all friends. The business has been clean, great, easy to do, different chamber from a lot of the other things that we do.
It's all wins. It's all wins.
There's no real downside. And sometimes people sit, they're like, why don't you do this? And it's like, nobody, if like Armand Hammer do a record with DJ Haram, we all are homies. We live right near each other. We hang out. But that doesn't mean that everybody's professional. Like, that's not an idea that hasn't crossed our minds. But it's like, what are people's obligations right at this time, and what do they need to do? You know what I mean?
yeah, that's fair. I mean, I feel like I've tried to with time resist the urge, not the urge, but just like combat that thinking where I'm like, oh, two people or like two different creative forces made a song together or like have some kind of connection. I'm like, oh, why don't you guys just make an album? Because I know it's not like that simple. There's so many things, like you said, timing,
Yeah.
business side of things, so many circumstances. So I don't try to assume, things like that happen again. But as you said it, you guys have always been kind of continuously working. So it's not really surprising, I guess. I can't really say why. Maybe it's me just not wanting to count my chickens until they hatch or something.
I
Like,
mean, it's just a cool part of like being a fan, the fantasy football, so to
Yeah,
speak, aspect
exactly.
of it. It's just cool. You can just line things up on paper and imagine what could be. And sometimes those things happen. But yeah,
And
it's totally
sometimes it's
natural.
good reason,
Yeah.
it's good reasons that people were like, Nas and Premier should make an album again.
Yeah.
The songs are good, so you're like, but of course, leaving room for the fact that I don't know anything about how, like, I would be like, yo, you should have done that. I think that would have been dope. And I would say that to the person, and then maybe they'll explain to you why it didn't happen,
Yeah.
you know? And other things, sometimes there's things where it's like, oh, definitely want to do that. But you got to remember, people have their own schedules and their own things that they're doing. And it might be like, yeah, maybe you are going to do that, but it's not going to be tomorrow.
Absolutely. And so like while Test Strips, the last Armand Hammer record, was your most probably musically ambitious and most kind of like sprawling album in terms of scope. I know like when we had chatted last time, like thematically even it was a lot of, it wasn't really necessarily centered around one specific thing. In contrast with that, Mercy does feel like a tighter listen. Like it feels a little more like zeroed in on something,
Yeah.
both like musically and kind of lyrically, where, you know, like ebbs and flows feel like they're more tightly wound around one central thing. And which brings me to how, firstly, how this album was recorded, because I feel it may explain this feeling I get, because it's something that I think, I don't know if we spoke or you had spoken about this in some interview in the past, about how like the methodology of how an album's made definitely influences how the music ends up sounding. And so from the moment this album kicks off and like throughout the record, I do notice there's like a bit more of like trading bars between you guys in rapid succession. And I wonder if like this, some of this record or a lot more of this record was recorded in person. So like generally, like how did the recording process look like for this album?
Yeah, that was definitely intentional as far as like going back and forth. Just very classic rap duo behaviors. You know, I had we had a talk with someone the other day, and uh, they asked us about also trading bars back and forth, and I like jokingly said we did it just so everyone could distinguish that Armand Hammer is two people. You know what I mean? Just finally laying it down. Um, but yeah, man, I just really wanted to do that. I just felt like we don't do it enough. We hadn't done it enough in the past. We're a duo. We can do it. We're sometimes in the studio at the same time. We should just do it. But yeah, a lot of this, some of this record, I don't know about a lot. Some things were recorded separately. Some things we recorded together. Some things were recorded in the same studio, like at Al's house. And sometimes, like, you know, we'd be in two different spots in New York, and just kind of like how an Arm and Hammer would piece together a song. So there's always many different ways to
A
do it.
couple of
But
them were recorded together at Dove's too.
that's true. That
Yeah.
is true. But yeah, I
Um,
think yeah, we did a lot of recording in the same room for this record for sure.
I mean, yeah, and the record was recorded in two distinct phases. And one thing I'd say is that we probably recorded uh, more or close to the same amount of material as for Haram, maybe a little more.
Hmm.
And so there were quite a few different. There was a lot of them in terms of the methodology here. There was a lot more in terms of figuring out like how we're going to exchange the mic or structuring the structure of songs, some of which didn't make the record or whatever. Than we were, yeah, like you said. Outside of that, I do think, um, yeah, it's a much tighter, much more tightly wound and constrained record than something like Test Strips, which was intentionally like, okay, we did something. How can we build on it? What can we build here? What can we do there? You know, from the beginning, it was very much of a give and flow between the live players, the producers, the rappers. To send it back to the producer, send maybe bring somebody back here, maybe get another feature, maybe do a thing here, and that was cool. And this was much more, you know, me and him and Al.
Yeah, we're fully produced by Alchemist. Like we just rapped. We wrote songs and we rapped, and I love that sort of lean approach just as much as I love the creative excess of something like a Test Strips with so many hands involved in the kitchen. Like that's dope, but like it's also just dope to just be like scale it back and, you know, just tone it up this way with one producer who knows what the fuck he's doing. So it's like, you know, just giving complete trust to Al to produce us. That's tight.
Yeah, I really like that way you say creative access, because it definitely showcases like different traits on this album. I think shine through more in terms of how you guys kind of approach things as MCs versus maybe a Test Strips where like other pieces came to the kind of the bubble it up to the surface. Especially with you, Lucid, I feel like your raps here and your performance generally is quite a bit more like rooted in kind of more straightforward rap, for a lack of a better word, versus
Yeah.
the other past records. Even really Haram, like Haram has like Stone Fruit songs like that, but and God's Feet, but like this album, it's a lot more like straightforward raps, and it's kind of like interesting to hear you guys in this bag.
Yeah, the beats kind of command the more straightforward approach, the more direct, eye level sort of approach. Like it all comes from the production, you know. Like when I say the creative excess, like it's not just the music; it's also the way I'm thinking about what I want to say and how much room that I'm gonna take up to say it. You know what I mean? Like just to kind of circle the drain on like songs with test strips. You know what I'm saying? Just like really indulging in that, and that comes through in the delivery and maybe the imagery. But yeah, with Al's beats, they don't really have some of those elements that the things on test strips might have had. So it's like I mean, you heard the album, right? From the
Hmm.
first song, it's no nonsense. So like, get on the train or get left. You know what I mean? Like I have to keep up. So yeah, it's just matching the energy of the production as best as I can. And yeah,
Yeah, and like with this being, I believe the seventh album together as Armand Hammer, if I think that number's right. On this album in
damn, is it
particular,
really?
I think it is. Yeah, right. Like from race music on, like maybe. Do you guys count furtive movements as an album?
No, that's an EP.
Yeah, it's an EP. Okay, so I think it is seven. Um, you know, it's always like a thing with your when you guys come together and create, but it's really astonishing how, despite you guys have very unique styles, you sound so at the same time on the same page, in sync, kind of different sides of the same coin. So much so, as you said, people think Armand Hammer is just one guy, unironically. But on a real note, you have songs like Dog Eared, which I think is like easily like up there as my favorite on this album, where your verses feel so singularly elucid in woods, yet they speak to each other in some kind of way and connect. And
Mm.
songs like this just emphasize this thing where like it feels like you guys are working from the same playbook, even if the words that you're saying and the verses are potentially either like super personal and narrative or really abstract. So how do you guys so sharply conceptualize songs in a way to where these ideas feel whole and not disjointed, and that, these thoughts actually connect to one another? Have you guys developed any like unspoken rules or rhythms in terms of how you approach writing?
It's always been unspoken. I got to tell you, here's a secret. There's a secret that's not the secret. It's always kind of been unspoken. Um, but yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like it's I think maybe I have to imagine just years of knowing each other and just hanging out as friends, you naturally come to similar conclusions.
Yeah, that all of that contributes. All of that contributes. But I can honestly say, from the first album, we were doing this thing. We were doing this thing. So yeah, it's kind of ill to maintain that. And yeah, it's bugging me out thinking about 7 albums that we've done. It's
And so you
crazy.
guys don't even like when you're like approaching a particular track, you don't even like share notes about like I'm thinking about going in this kind of vibe or like talking
I mean,
about this
sometimes
specific thing.
sometimes that may
Well,
happen.
of course that
So
happens
yeah,
for
but
sure.
then sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't. I think there's all different type. Sometimes you hear the song and you're like, oh, this is what the person's doing. I think that there's really it runs the gamut. Sometimes there's a conversation beforehand of what's exactly the plan, or you write something and the other person is like, okay, well, what is it? What's going on with it? What are you doing in there? Maybe you send a demo of the verse or send the lyrics, or just be like,
A
hey, I'm
phrase.
talking about loss, or a bunch of phrases. Sometimes you're like, I'm listening to this beat and these are the phrases that are coming to mind, or this is a title. And other times it's completely, you're just writing and then, oh, you got your verse, okay, cool.
Fair. Yeah, that makes sense. And like since you guys are kind of saying like this has really been that kind of chemistry or that kind of just being on the same page really has existed even early on to your collaborative careers, especially when I listen back to like that first race music and then put Mercy on right after. While some things are very similar, there are certainly, growth to be seen and refinement as a duo. So, like, how, in your opinion, has that chemistry or just ways that you approach music together changed or evolved over time? And is there anything noticeably different that is at play when you guys work nowadays versus then?
Not not really. Before being like Rome or something?
Yeah, Rome, race music times, I
No,
guess.
not
Yeah,
really.
that's.
No. I mean, there are differences because of our lifestyles.
Mhm.
Uh, Certain albums we were around each other in person less for a variety of maybe live further away or pandemic or when we were recording a lot of Rome and Paraffin. Sometimes we'd be at Green's house when he was recording in his crib, or at Chaz was living in East New York. We'd be over there. Now it's more likely that we're recording in sometimes separate. It's just yeah, lifestyle stuff is different a little bit, but even that has come and gone because then at other points we've lived on the same block like after he lived in Long Island. So all of that has been a normal sort of ebb and flow, I think. No real like, oh, we used to sit and do this and now we do this. No.
Mm. Okay, fair enough. And so, one of my favorite joints on here is actually the second single that you guys have dropped, Calypso Gene, which I love listening to you guys' music because I didn't know what that was like, what that title is until I just Googled it.
Hmm.
Seems to be a reference to the Calypso singer moniker for the Honorable Mr. Minister Louis Farrakhan, which is a fun fact for those listening. I doubt most people knew about that, at least. Um, that's interesting, but like more specifically, more importantly, as it relates to the song, it speaks to this idea of, I feel like, washing yourself clean of, past sins, seeking salvation. That "dip me in the water" refrain seems to be like a reference maybe to like baptizing, something like that. And in certainly within the context of like the court setting in the cover, and just as I listen to the rest of the album, like this general sentiment I feel you play with is consistent, where ideas of reckoning, mercy, or grace are things that come to mind. And I'm wondering, as we talk about this being a bit more of an album that's like a bit more tightly wound to one around one or a few central ideas, like could you elaborate on what inspired like the direction lyrically, thematically for this album and how those ideas come to play?
Hmm. Good question, man. If I'm not mistaken, I set the song off first, right?
With Calypso Jane?
Yeah,
No, I had the first verse.
you had no, I mean like
Oh, who
On the
recorded?
from the
album?
jump, from the jump.
Oh,
Like
yeah, you're the first verse on the album, I believe. Yeah.
no, but Woods, I was saying,
We're talking
I
about
was
Calypso Jane.
Oh.
yeah, from the inception. I think it's one of those things that I started off first, and then I was like, peep this, and then we kind of built it from there up.
I don't remember. In my mind, I would assume that I probably was rhyming first because I ended up first.
Okay.
And a lot of times went back and forth, but I could be wrong. That's not
Yeah. Okay.
true. If you have
So
a
yeah, however it started, however it did start, I do remember listening to the beat and water. I kept seeing water. I kept hearing water. Something about like the texture in the beat. I kept thinking about that, and then I just get to writing my verse, and I'm thinking about you know water as like a passageway, um, as like a record keeper, uh, like a holder of like memories, and then that kind of like splits off into like thinking about like spiritual systems and African centered traditional spiritual systems, and here in America even I was raised as a Christian, um spooky Christians from the Gullah land, so there's that, and it's like, yeah, the idea of water as this sort of cleansing force, just the sight of just getting yourself together, getting yourself right. There's so many systems that like practice with water at water sites, and yeah, getting Cleo Reed on the song, who kind of understood this perspective too, made a lot of sense. Also with Silka, um, but yeah, Woods had a completely different take. But like in classic Armand Hammer fashion, these sorts of like disparate angles can intersect in
Yeah, I
a
don't
an
know.
interesting way.
Completely different take. We didn't collaborate on coming up with the take, but completely different take might be going a little further than I
Not
think.
completely different.
Yeah.
It's not completely different, but there's a lot of like border talk.
Yeah.
It's like military talk.
Yeah, but there's also the beginning of the song is like, I think of it as, it's a personal.
Sure.
It's funny because I know one person said to me, "Oh, are you talking to like your kid?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not talking about I used to hustle with your mom. I'm saying like you meet somebody and you're like, oh, I used to
You
hang,
hustle with
like
your
your
baby
mom,
mom's
like I
moms.
used to hang out with your mom. Your grandmother used to be the OG that I knew, or somebody that I knew, and it's like envisioning and moving in that sort of a situation, which was sort of very very personal, which is a different sort of, yeah. That's where the verse started for me, and then I think I ended up on the other place. You know,
Hmm.
where
Yeah, and I mean,
and then it's still very personal. All the stuff about
Yeah.
you know family, dad left you out the car, all those sorts of things.
yeah, yeah, and like I feel like this song is like a good kind of jumping off point because like I feel like that these ideas they don't just show up once. Like
Hmm.
I feel, songs like Super Nintendo even it's like it feels like it's playing off of that idea of forgiveness, but just obviously from like a different perspective where I feel like, you're painting pictures of like things people had to do in the past, empathizing with their situations, contextualizing it about, things that people did to get by. And, I feel like that obviously the title Mercy goes without saying. Like, do you feel like you were having particular ideas of like coming to grips with either personal or maybe more societal harms that have taken place and kind of like trying to make sense of it and like be at peace with it? Like, were those things that like animated a lot of the record, like as far as the whole album goes?
Well, here's what I'd say. For in my mind, there were lots of things on the album, as always, that sometimes you even looking at that song, right? I remember. So here's a funny thing. I wrote the first verse, and Chaz it, send it back. I'm like, okay, second verse. And at that point, I remember, I don't know for what reason, but I write all my rhymes on paper. So I had a rhyme book that, not from a super long time ago, some time ago. And on one page, I had started something and just never done anything else. But it was like the river is the border is the river. And and then I was like, oh, I like this. And then I took that. And then that kind of led me, as I was writing it, into that, there's like the Shakespeare Three Sisters Over the Cauldron thing. And then that just kind of led me into the thing, leafing through an old notebook like Nas, Book of Rhymes, whatever. And then I went to check. I literally did not know this. I wrote the thing, whatever, and some point I went to check it, and I'm like, oh, the Alchemist produced that song for Nas,
Yeah, yeah, you did.
and I'm like, oh, that's sometimes there's things like that are not even intentional, that revealed themselves through just like working on the rhyme. Like I literally had looked at the old notebook, and then that made me think of Nas, and then only to realize that's actually a song that Al produced. So I feel like, especially on this record, I feel like there were lots of moments of just seeing where things carried themselves, which is kind of, especially if you're doing something back and forth, a lot of times that's either the way you're going to approach it, is moods and ideas, and then see where you guys end up, or you got to be like, this is a specific idea. You're doing this, I'm doing this. You know what I mean? So this was definitely a record where at times it was like let's see where it carries us. And we were into working on it by the time the title came up.
How did that title, like, how did that conversation look like? Did it just seem like this was something you guys kept circling back to as far as like what you ended up creating, and you're like, this makes sense as a title?
I don't know, we were probably like 70% of the way through.
Yeah.
And I was like listening to it and just thinking about a title. And then I just was like, I think this is a title. That's what, there's so many angles to that word. And there are so many different ways in which I thought it could be applicable. I liked it, seemed to fit, and it seemed to address some of the, it felt apt to what I was listening to. You could ask for mercy, but it's also something that can be given unasked for, or denied. It has a lot of, I just saw a lot of ways in which, you could look at it. An exhaustion, or an enlightenment, or like uncovering,
I love that. Yeah, I especially because I hear that. Yeah, I guess that's perfect actually, because that's how I take a lot of this album, where I feel like you're circling around that idea of mercy or grace or whatever that word you want to use. Let's use mercy, but it's not like the same type take. It's like asking for mercy for some, like someone to show mercy to you. It's also all the other ways, like mercy as in like like enlightenment, giving yourself up to something, and kind of like finding peace. Like it kind of has like those kinds of meanings. And it reminds me of a song, or like a moment off of Haram, where there's that skit at the end of one of the songs, where it's like, where the one, like the person speaking is like, will God forgive us for what we did to this country? And I always have
this world.
that, or this world, sorry. And I feel like it just is a feeling that I think I found it really striking when I listened to Haram. And I feel like that weight is all over this record, where there's a tension that you guys maintain and explore in a really interesting way.
I mean, that's good. I'm happy to hear that. But I think there's a lot of room in this album, in the lyrics, and conceptually, and in the ideas. There's a lot of room. I felt like Haram maybe was more claustrophobic, more was narrower, and one is not better than the other. They're just different.
Mm. Yeah, and even this idea of like water too, like I'm curious to know, like, was this something that you guys identified early and were like interested in kind of pulling connections to it throughout the album? Because I feel like there's mentions of water on, like, I feel like My Body, Dog Eared, Glue Traps. Even the production kind of feels like subterranean. There's
Hmm.
water effects through it. Like, was any of this like intentional, or did it just kind of happen? Was it kind of just happenstance, coincidental?
Not intentional on my end. I can't.
Not intentional. It's cool to do interviews sometimes with people who like really pay attention to the music, like you're doing. Because I didn't really peep that. I didn't.
Interesting.
I did not. I did not notice that. So it wasn't intentional.
Okay,
But yeah,
that's
that's part of the cool thing about building an album. You know, oftentimes like you see pieces starting to fit together, and then sometimes you don't. They're not visible for me, even the creator, to see them linking up together. So that's dope that you see it.
yeah. And I think what you had mentioned earlier about like this, like Haram felt like maybe a bit more claustrophobic. Like the word I think about it, it feels a bit more like volatile in comparison to Mercy. Where it's like this album, you're like reporting from ground zero of the ruins of empire, whereas that one felt like you were speaking closer to like the heart of chaos. As there's like this really like calm, level-headed lucidity about this album that like doesn't feel like you're coming from like a place of utopia, but it feels actually like it's framed in this like cold reality, where like there's like almost like a quiet haunted intensity that it feels like is like always bubbling under the surface. And again, the production that Al selected and created for you guys really emphasized that like nocturnalness, and it's so consistent. And I feel the intro, Laraaji, really sets the table for this album well, because it plays out like an enthralling piece that feels kind of defiant, but then also like has a lot of anxious energy to it as well. And in your minds, how would you describe the dominant emotion that this album evokes? Like, was there any kind of specific feeling or tension that you feel this record holds on to from start to finish?
If it's me, I guess I find the record quite contemplative. There are moments which are different, but even within those moments, like a song like "Crisis Phone" is pretty intense and propulsive in the beat and in Sifu's contribution and everything that's going on, but it still ends kind of on a contemplative note. And like the moments that are the most kinetic often give way to moments of introspection would be an oversimplification, but yeah, to give way to contemplative moments, to nuanced and to contemplative moments, to moments of abstraction, um, to both moments of joy and of terror are quiet ones, for the most part.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I do get like it does a lot of this album, especially musically, feels like dreamlike at times or nightmarish, but again, not like crazy chaotic. I do think like Crisis Phone's probably like one of the more, yeah, like propulsive. I like that word. It definitely is like that. But then there's like Dog Ear, there's Nil by Mouth, Scandinavia that just feel like very nocturnal, and it's a heady album. I mean, all your music is pretty heady, but this one especially feels like that to me. And like on that song too, I don't like to honestly get too bar whisperer necessarily, but I did want to share perspective on one of the lines off Laraaji, because I just wanted to see if I'm like super off here. But like the last line is man in a hole, I'm through running, which is something that I take as like a double entendre. And I'm asking, like, is that completely off? Am I just like over analyzing this to death?
No, in my mind, it was just like it's the whole verse is like like person is describing a person. Yeah, you went to sleep and retreat, woke up defeated. Every man for himself is edict. God side with the winners, the thief next to Jesus. I wanted to be better than my father, but history just repeated. To the person of looking at what has led them to this point, seeing where they are, and being like, I'm through with it. Like it's pretty nihilistic, but in the sense of like all of these things have happened. I'm looking at it, and I'm not, at that final position of being like, okay, I'm lying on a narrow cotton and SRO. I'm through with trying to make moves or run away or whatever the person has been doing that's led them to this place. They're through with it.
And is it through as in like I'm done doing that? Like I'm done running away?
It might be giving up, just giving up. Maybe the opposite of somebody like on Squeegee, the guy was trying to switch it up and fix his life and feeling like that's imperiled and in danger. This could be. I'm just coming up with this off the top of my head. I didn't think or, but it's to me is somebody more being like, if they're coming for me, then let them come. I'm not going anywhere.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting because it's funny. I actually initially took this song as like on a different read where I'm like, it felt like more like emphatic resistance, where like I'm through running was like I'm done running away from my troubles. Like I'm gonna confront things.
I mean, yeah, no, it could be that, but it's just obviously the person is saying that from a perspective of like everything they said would lead you to say, do you have the
Mm,
resources to come? It's fine to say I'm through running away from my problems. If you're a 55-year-old indigent person living in a single room, that might your emphatic resistance might not matter at that point.
yeah.
You're 2 seconds from being homeless. regardless of what you try to go do at this point, it might already be a wrap. But no, I'm not. I don't think you're wrong in that. That could be one way to take it. I'm just saying, looking at it, this is a person who's laying out how they got to this point.
Yeah, no, and I love the football season grounding because that's where the double entendre really like, or that idea where I was like, oh, what does this actually mean? Because it's like you're like a running back running through the hole, which actually felt like I'm through running. It felt like you were actually just like so scared, and there was a lot of anxiety, nervousness, your heart's beating. It was just a really interesting imagery to kick off the album, and it.
I think all of those things could work. I used to, for years, I lived for a long time. I lived in a building which had an SRO, an illegal SRO on the first floor, and it was interesting because these are people who are like different levels of being a step above homelessness. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's quite a distance, and other times it's like right there. And quite a distance is really not that far if you're paying your rent weekly to stay in a room and use a common bathroom or whatever in Brooklyn anyway. And it was just interesting to see all of these different people and in this one circumstance, and think a lot about how like homelessness in many ways is like a male, not completely, but it's like men make up a significant amount of the homeless population, to my understanding, and and of like the chronically homeless, and so to live there for years and see the different people who came through there. There were some people who lived there for years. Sometimes there were people who lasted 2 weeks. You know, sometimes there's somebody who's there and you coming and going, you see them nodding out with a needle in their arm. You're like, oh. And then the next thing you see the guy and he obviously is off it and doing things, and then he's back on it or whatever, Sometimes there are people who went to work every day and came back to there, or like a veteran who's just living on his VA check and like stays there, goes outside, washes his Cadillac, has the POW flag on it, whatever, you know what I mean? There's all different types of people, and just thinking about how these men all end up in those situations and the different roads that can lead you there.
Right. Pardon the interruption, but if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe, like the video, and hit the bell as well. And if you're checking this out on podcast platforms, please follow the show, leave a rating, leave a review if possible. This will help the algorithm do its thing and get more people tapped in. Thank you so much. Now back to the show. When I think of this album and think about your last one, Test Strips, obviously the process from a sound perspective couldn't have been more different, where on the previous record, you worked with those handful of musicians in the jam sessions, siphon out those sound packs to, an assembly line of great producers within your orbit. But with Mercy, it was created solely by the Alchemist, production wise. Were there any kind of like, I'm curious to just understand like how the process for the beats went. Like, were there any points of reference or musical cues that you gave Al as he kind of crafted the sound for this album?
I don't think so this time around. On Haram, I definitely contributed ideas towards production. On this album, I just wanted to be produced. And yeah, working with Al, it's like a combination of many ways that the music comes about to be written to. But yeah, it's always the vibe that I'm moving with. Like specifically every time I think about this, I think about that song Long John's. Something about that beat reminded me of like Pharoah Sanders so much. Just that whole sort of like spiritual jazz thing that I wanted. I could say now that the album's done, like I feel like I wanted more of that, but there was that one, and we took it and ran with it. But yeah, not many contributions, to the sound palette. He kind of had us locked in. He knows what he thinks that we'd like. It's always like a thoughtful curation of beats. If he's sending a pack, or like sometimes we're there and he'll just play things from the computer or play things off the MPC, and you know we have a pretty good
And it
chemistry
took a
like that.
period of time. So it was a bunch of beats that went through. Like I said, there's probably like 6 songs
Yeah.
that didn't make the album. So there were things also that we did, and then when it came time to crunch the numbers, a lot of times, you know, it might be Al being like, "Man, I like that song, but the beat isn't. I like the beat on this one better, so let's do that." And you know, it was songs where it was like, "Oh, I really like this," and you know, everybody else is kind of like, "But what about this one?" And you know, so there was some different type of production. There were some different things that didn't make it that I think we'll see the light of days in different ways. Um, so it was interesting because it's definitely a situation where you end up figuring out what's working to make the album. It's not just, oh, these are the best songs. Like there were one or two that I really, more than one or two. There were several that I really loved that didn't make it, but it was like with good reason. Once we sat down and we were going through them and putting together a playlist, this was the one that felt the most. Yeah, it felt like a record. It felt like an album.
Yeah, there's a really remarkable level of cohesion on this album. Like the little musical details were handled with such care. Obviously, shout out to Willie Green for, you know, his role in this. I didn't check, but I imagine he, like, I probably should have, but he mastered or did some kind of post production work as he normally does. Um,
He
yeah,
mixed the
yeah, and
record without, you know, Al. That's him and Al, and to whatever extent Elucid was involved, that's their
yeah, I,
territory. But yeah, that was nice. Even looking at like Gollywog, that beat that Al did on there was one I picked for this record. But then it was like everyone wasn't really, when it came down to like, is this the one? You know, we got 10 beats left in our stash. Which ones do we want to work on to finish the thing? It didn't get, so I just said, yo, can I slide that over here and use it for something? And
hmm, I
it
I could
happened.
see how that one was in the running for this album. I kind of it does have a similar feeling, at least somewhat contemplative.
But no, but that one I feel like is maybe to me, it's just more
Yeah, no, I
sinister.
agree. It still, I think he made the right decision because it did feel more creepy.
Yeah, and there's one for the Gangrene record that I thought was crazy, but I was outvoted. And then at the end of I mean, we all thought it was crazy, but when we put the album together and they were like, nah, maybe leave that one off. Pretty quickly, I started to be like, I get it. It's a really, really hard track that might have been hard to
Hmm.
place here.
and and yeah, like there's some great moments of just like little musical brilliance here. Like, man, the way that you're like harmonizing with Sifu on the Crisis phone hook, that shit is crazy. Like, oh my god, it's so fucking
that
cool. Ugh, man, Sifu's such a genius.
was his idea. He did the
It's
verse and he was like, "Yo, you gotta do the ad libs with me." But I didn't. They're mixed in a way that I feel like, you know, they're, I know that they're there, but I wondered if everyone else would tell. Was
That's
yeah,
one of my favorite
I didn't.
verses of yours on here.
It's
I
good to
like
hear.
that one a lot.
it's great. And
Yeah, it's a good
yeah,
song.
like I think there with this album musically, like few characteristics of it, like I think really just like for me solidified a few things that Al does like either the best or undoubtedly like one of the best ever. And that's like, you know, there's some great drums, there's some like amazing grooves, and I just feel like his kick drums especially are just always so damn crisp and just like perfectly tuned. And then the other thing is
Hmm.
just like the way he's able to effortlessly thread the needle between different vibes, yet make them like cohesively kind of transition into one another. Like you have like I think it's like dog eared into Crisis Phone, and all of it just flows so beautifully. And so I'm curious, in your view, as people that not only worked with Al, but also have like been, you know, fans of his forever, like what are in your view is like some of his superpowers? Like what makes his specific brand of production so special to you and one of one?
You got the transitions part. He's a master with the transitions. I mean, I think also I think he's one of those people who can uh, at times, and I mean, this is just oversimplification, but something about when you do something in somewhat minimalist ways at times, then it's like, oh no, it's like if you're making a cocktail with 3 ingredients, you got to get them right. You know, if you have 8 ingredients, then it's like,
You got more room.
well, yeah, there's more room for, maybe everybody won't like it, but there's
Yeah.
more room to be. But if it's like just the alcohol and, you know, 2 other things, then it's like you got to really figure out what you're doing, because there's not a lot of room to confuse the issue there. If you get one thing wrong, then it's like, this isn't even really a drink.
Yeah.
And you could have something where people are like, man, this isn't even really a beat. There's just a couple different sounds that are out of sync, you know,
Yeah.
or don't really work together or don't add up to anything. And I find that he's a real expert at coming in and being like, think, think, think. Although in this case, on this album, was the first time of us working with him where there was a full, one of the songs he did almost, not completely, but almost the full LP thing, where like when you work with LP, he lets you know off the top, you can record this, but
It's gonna be different
you
in
can
the end.
get something and just gonna have to live with it or scrap it.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right. But whereas I think that Al usually comes in and does strategic 1 or 2 things in the post production.
Yeah.
And it's like, bang, oh, they make a big difference, but it
Yeah.
wasn't. Homie was in there doing everything.
Yeah.
But California Games was a significant switch up,
completely different beat
with some crazy progressions. When I first heard it, I was like, I like the other one, and Al was like, you're definitely tripping. I was like, I like the other one, but maybe I'm tripping. And Chazado was like, nah, this is the one. This is it. This is amazing. And I was like, you're definitely tripping.
Yeah. We recorded to a totally different beat.
I listened again, and then I was like, "Now you guys are right. This is crazy." But that's a rarity with him. But also, I would say that's also important, knowing when and having the ability to go do that when you need to. Yeah, not that that's the way you need to, that you do things, but that was the last song we did. We did it in the studio with Tebe. Al had the beat live out of the machine or whatever. I think it was live out of the machine, or it was on. It was just not like a finished thing. Maybe he put it on his laptop or whatever, and we went and worked on it and just did it in the studio in the moment. And that was a song that we all really liked and felt good about. And I think he felt like he needed to feel as good about the beat on his end being the last thing. And so it just ended up really switched up. But yeah, seeing somebody have the ability to hold back and be minimalist and do specific little things that really make something work. But then if he needs to, can go in there, go under the hood, take out everything, put it back together, and, you know, give you a whole different car, and the shit is fly. Yeah. It's interesting to see that range.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, with the subtle changes, knowing when to make subtle changes that make really big differences is something that like pro guys like Alchemists have mastered. You know what I mean? It's not always like, you know, it's easy to overproduce. It's easy to throw 150 elements in there and be like, it's so complex, and sure, but like there's like a gift in like understanding balance and harmony and knowing just what's needed at just this moment to like lift a song and, you know, have the journey continue in a particular way. But I think for me also, Al's also a rapper. I feel like he just knows what rappers like. He knows what can set a rapper off in a trance. Like that sort of like zone that we need to go into to like dig up these lyrics. Like he understands that. He understands that it comes usually from a simple loop. And he's able to like make those things in really clever, unique ways that are his own. And then can spin those out and build those out when necessary. You know what I mean? And that's one of my favorite things that, you know, for me as a fan, as someone who's written so many rhymes, you know, courtesy of J Arms, bootleg CD instrumentals of the best of Alchemists when I was, you know, we're talking about the year 2002. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, just like the rapper, the pure rapper instinct in me understands that I just need maybe some drums, some bass, and some noise, and like that's all I really need to get me going in a trance there to write some rhymes.
That's so true. I find myself too forgetting that, not forgetting that he raps, because I like his raps too. It's more like when I think about him as a producer in that sense, I do forget that, oh yeah, he also raps like a lot too. And I do find people,
Yeah.
rapper producers, tend to have just like this extra level of understanding as to like pockets and those nuances as
Hmm.
a MC that sometimes producers that just produce don't as much.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, are you familiar with the low end theory?
Yeah.
Like that sort of a thing. I remember when I was really like popular. And I also remember like I felt like a lot of those producers just didn't give a fuck about rappers. Like and the way I understood that was through like the songs that were made, there would be no pocket for the rapper. It would be such a minimal little pocket, but the beat would have 100 elements going on, and it's all these changes and switches and blah blah blah. And it's just be like, yo, this. I wish you guys did it another way. You know, there's certain examples that stick out in my mind, but yeah, I feel like producers, you know, it's easy to get a big head. I guess for anybody, right, to have a big head about what you're doing, but with the collaborative sort of process, you know,
Yeah.
it's good to take out the sculpting tool and have your measurements be accurate and should be harmonious and balanced. And yeah, Al really knows how to do that, how to sculpt that way.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, something I've always adored about his approach to production is that he can shapeshift his sound and tailor it so specifically to the strengths of an artist. Like with Boldy, he leans into the gritty, more traditional boom bap structures. With like Larry June or Marcy, like he's a little more like exquisite in that like luxury bag, lots of pretty keys and such. And in contrast to the work he does with other MCs, what kind of musical space do you feel he dives into when working with you two specifically as Arm and Hammer? Like, do you feel Al shows a different side of his musical palette or flavor when working with you?
Mm. I think maybe if I had to contrast like the things we rap over from him versus other things other people rap over, I would the first thing I would think about would be maybe like the timing or the turnaround of the drums. It's a little more offbeat. Instead of four, it'll change around on the one and the three instead of the two and the four. It's I see that. Um yeah, the pockets are a little more broken. Other people get smoother beats. Our beats are a little different. That's just how I'm hearing it though. That doesn't make it true. What do you think, Hood?
I mean, it's hard to know what he's picking and what it is that we pick.
Yeah.
We get lots of beats and we pick things, and obviously he also decides what beats to send us or to like play in the studio, or play in the studio and you hear it and you're like, I like that one, but he skips to the next one. Uh, but generally speaking, to me, I feel like our stuff sounds a little more experimental at times, out of pocket. There's certain things, but I don't know that he didn't play those for other people and they just didn't pick
Right.
them. Like I think
Right.
about a song like Pepper Tree, or like who is gonna rhyme. What was somebody gonna do over Stone Fruit,
Right.
or trying to think of it. Whereas there are certain things you can be like, okay, I see that. Those are a couple of the ones where I feel like, maybe Robert Moses too. Where I feel like, oh, this is some weird different stuff that I can't really see who else would have rapped over it, or maybe Tebe, or maybe it would have just been an instrumental record or something. Um, I guess that's what I'd say a little bit. But again, it's hard to know what's just because
Yeah.
you're picking
I,
it
I
because of your
definitely think
taste.
it's like the more experimental and the pockets are more broken. I also think like he's a very prolific instrumental producer too. Like instrumental only producer, several albums like that. And I feel like maybe you guys pick some of those beats where I'm like, because like I can't imagine he works with so many artists, but like I'm just making myself laugh here thinking of like Larry June rapping over Sir Benny Miles or like fucking Pepper Tree. And I love Larry June. That's just so funny to me. Like, that's just like legitimately hilarious. And but I could totally see that shit being like
Yeah,
solo
exactly.
instrumentals because they're just so interesting on its face, you know? So, there's that. Um, so like, like feature wise, this album features a lot of like, familiar faces, but then there's also some newer characters that you guys have collaborated with on an Armand Hammer album, like Silka, Kepwani, and Cleo Reed. Cleo Reed appearing twice. What was the kind of like vibe you were hoping to get from these cast of characters? Like what informed some of these decisions to bring them on to the record?
I think the tone of the music, um, and wanting to round out the sound, which we had pretty much. I think we've done it a couple of times on throughout these Armor Hammer projects, but I think test strips it was really much more direct in that way. And I think we may have been like taking a cue from that. But for me, it's like it's always about the song, what could complement the song best. Um, and for those joints that you hear Silka or Kaplani on or Cleo Reed on, yeah, just adding that additional kind of texture was just interesting in the moment.
Yeah, I think especially on tracks like Calypso Gene, those voices. I think that's the one. I think Silka and Cleo Reed are on that one, if I'm not mistaken. Like
Mm-hmm.
the way their voices are like kind of blended into the mix, it just adds such a emotional weight. Like it's a heavy feeling
Yeah,
and so much emotion behind it. It's
yeah,
great.
because with that song in particular, um, yeah, I had the chorus laid already, and just listening to my voice alone, I was just like, it just needed to be wider. It just needed just some additional like contrast in colors, just to really make it fly. And yeah, just female vocals on top of our kind of thing just sounds ill. Like particular, female vocals just sounds ill to me. So yeah, they did that together, in the studio with Willie Green. And that balance that you're hearing, that was done together. They sang it together as a group, and yeah, once they opened their mouths and laid that, it just made so much sense, and it was bringing back to test strips. As you're doing these things live, you're recording things live in ensembles and duo, like I immediately know or knew when I was like, that's it, right? Like they could be rehearsing and practicing and stumbling over and just trying to figure out the timing and the phrasing, and they had never sang together before. So in the studio for the first time, it's a back and forth. They're getting to know each other in particular way musically, and yeah, the tape is just rolling. The tape is just rolling. They're just working it out. They're working it out. And then they're on it together. They're locked in. You just kind of know it immediately. I was very grateful to capture those moments with them.
The results were fantastic. I really like how the features were placed on this record. Um, and so like taking a bit more of like a 10,000 foot level view here for a second, take a step back. I know that working with Al initially on Haram was a huge milestone for you both in your career. It was a big major springboard to, continue your rise in acclaim and success. And now 4 years later, back linking up again. This relates to a patron question I have from Robert Rau. Shout out to you. Who wanted to know, like, given your prolific careers, and all of the achievements you've already had, like, do you have any other specific achievements or milestones in mind? Or are you just more focused on living and staying in the moment as you continue to craft more new work? Is there any particular goal you still have on your mind that you haven't felt like you've achieved yet?
Mm. I like to stay in the moment. I feel like a lot of these goals, that whatever has happened, I wasn't actually kind of aiming for it in a particular way. Maybe not in the way that, in the most specific way. Like I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna make a record with Alchemist. Like that was never on like the list, but it happened. And I think it happened because I stayed in the moment, just working. Like I just wanted to be a really dope rapper. I wanted to work with all the best dope rappers. I want to produce. I want to, just like my daily, just do this particular thing very well. And through that, you know, accomplishments and whatever started to happen. Things started to happen on the periphery, but it all relates back to the center, just like being in the moment, just like knowing what I wanted to do in the daily. Not a lofty sort of idea, but just like the craftsman idea of like, this is what I want to do. And just being trying to be the best at it. But yeah, there's a lot of things I want to do. I'm jealous of Woods. He's got a couple books. You know, he's got a couple books, man. You know, I would love to be on a track somewhere. You know, doing things that way. You know, I have a couple things I'd like to say.
Yeah.
Careful what you look for, you just might get it.
Yeah, like, I feel like I'll just say that because this reminded me of the thing we just talked about with the features. Like, one of the things that I feel like you both have achieved that maybe I'll just say it, that is like, I think really dope is it's not about numbers or, reviews or any of that stuff. It's more just like, I feel like through work as Armand Hammer, through your solo work, as well as like, uh, tangentially related, obviously, to like the work that's all going on backwoods right now. I think you guys have really like put on for some dope artists and given them a platform to bring them new eyes, like myself included. Like Cleo Reed, I checked out because I saw Woods, you had a feature with her. I'm like, okay, cool, let me check it out.
She's sick.
And they're
What a
dope.
star.
And I checked out the whole album and I was so impressed.
What a star.
Nosage on Shrines back in the day was the reason why I checked out of any of his work to begin with.
Hmm.
And there's many countless examples like that. So, I think that's definitely something you guys have really, you should feel proud about, for real.
It's important. I think it's important. And you know, you named a lot of I guess more newer, recent sort of artists, but like I guess also even more recently, Woods, you know, particularly has been kind of like reaching backwards. You know, we had Vought Omega at the Knockdown Center
Yeah,
show,
I heard about that.
right?
Fucking wish I could
Like,
be there.
yeah,
God damn.
yeah. Like, he had Mike Ladd on. Was he on Map? Was that Maps Woods or
No, I think I was on
that was what?
Atheos, right? Yeah.
Oh, Athiops. I'm bugging. Yeah, yeah. Mike Ladd. You know, New York City underground virtuoso staple. You know, from '99, 2000, late '90s, early 2000s. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's important to I guess like showcase and like contextualize like this shit that we do doesn't just come out of nowhere. Like it has a lineage. Like we're following in a particular lineage. We're doing our own thing, but we come from a particular lineage, and like we don't operate like in a vacuum.
Mhm.
So it's also important to like put on for like people that we also see might be tapping into similar pools like us. You know what I mean? And then you have like, you know, somebody like I would say a Fatboy
Yeah.
Sharif. You said in Asajj, like Cleo Reed. Like it's a mindset that kind of shines through when people do their thing and you can kind of see and like maybe relate to it and whatever. But like, yeah, man, it's cool for me to prop up those that have like come before us and that are younger than us, so they'll be here after because I'm here right now doing it. So like, yeah, thank you for recognizing that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so as we kind of conclude this, what are some things that fans should look out for as far as like new work upcoming, tour dates, merch, anything like that?
All of that is happening. All of
Yeah, we
that
got
is
some
happening.
Myra Musgrove, who did the artwork for the album, and Alexander Richter kind of teamed up on a T-shirt we did to commemorate that show with Al. So we're gonna make some of those available online. I think a
Mm-hmm.
limited amount.
Nice.
Uh, we obviously the album itself is Mercy is the big thing. There is something else that's gonna happen, but it's a secret. And
You said there's
without
something else that's going to happen, you can't speak to it? Is that what you said?
yeah, but by the time this comes out, it'll probably have happened already. So
Okay,
um,
holy shit. All right.
yeah,
Interesting.
and then early next year, I think this Lucy Seb Bash album is going to be crazy.
I was going to
Everyone else
ask about
is
that
gonna be
because
absolutely crazy.
Yes.
Um, and it's kind of happening at the same time. But like that Human Error Club album, like both Chaz and I collaborated with them. They did Dislocated on my record. We plan to do more work together in the future. So get
Hmm.
familiar. That Human Error Club record was really special. They also performed as well as Cleo Reed in L.A. Our direct support was Human Error Club, and yeah, amazing uh, trio from Los Angeles. Um, they're gonna be on the road. They're gonna play that show in Toronto with me.
Oh
They're gonna
yeah, yeah. Trust me,
drop
I
it.
know. Michaela, did Michaela tell you about his living situation in Toronto?
In Toronto?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. It's funny. He basically he sent me a voice note like a week ago being like, "Yo, I had a very American moment. I thought like my hookup to stay was in Montreal was like he thought Montreal was Toronto. So he's like, "Can you hook me up with like anywhere, like help me out like place to stay or connection?" And I think you know this guy, Danny. He's one of my friends that like one of the times we first met. I think it was that first show I met you guys in person in 2022. He
Okay.
has a place to stay, like he can host them, so very lucky, and shout out to Danny for hooking them up. But yeah, it was just funny because he's like, yeah, I thought Montreal was Toronto, so we kind of need a place to stay, man. I'm like, okay, let me see what I can do.
Thought Montreal was Toronto. Is crazy.
Yeah. But I'm really happy that Seb Bash album's coming because I literally had that noted down as wanting to follow up because I think initially I thought it was coming out this year and then Mercy was announced. I'm like, how are you guys gonna drop that too? But next year's fine by me.
Indeed. I've been holding on to it for a while.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Y-
That's gonna be crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's always amazing having you guys on the show. It's been a few times now, so it definitely isn't something that, I take for granted. It's always an honor and especially given like, this is such a pivotal time of growth and success for the both of you. So, it just continues to be inspiring and I'm sure when this album officially drops, like people are going to think it's another amazing record to add to this like already bulletproof catalog because it's another album of the year contender. It's amazing and yeah, just thank you so much for the time. It's I really appreciate it. It was a dope conversation.
Yo, thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Definitely
so much. And
appreciate it.
Thanks for
for
having
you,
us.
Woods, I will see you in November. I'll be at that show with in Toronto with Human Error Club. I'm really excited for that.
Right on. I'll see you there.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rap Music Plug podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to not only support the show, but join the fastest growing community of like-minded indie rap fans, go to patreon.com, search for the Rap Music Plug podcast, and become a patron. You will gain access to an exclusive patron-only Discord that me and 70 plus people engage with on the regular, as well as other patron-only benefits such as exclusive access to the iconic RMPP listening parties, album recommendations, and much more. So if you have any questions about any of the Patreon stuff or just want to keep tabs on the show, interact with me on rap music and all the great stuff that we can talk about, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at rapmusicplugpod or shoot me an email at qlctv.podcast@gmail.com. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well. But that's enough self-promotion for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.